First, you should have already looked through the syllabus in the previous video that talked about some of the items in the syllabus and a little bit of an overview of the course. And as an entrepreneurship course, we will go through several items. We will go through homework assignments. We will go through some discussion posts and kind of take a little tour through different components relating to entrepreneurship. And so I will try to make these videos engaging. I will also have supplemental videos that are from other speakers, and hopefully offering you a colorful look at some of the key components of not only the skill set that it takes to be a successful entrepreneur, but examples of success and frameworks, right? It's so important to have those frameworks, right? Most of us know how to use a YouTube video to maybe fix our hot water tank, right? Get it back up and running if the pilot light is out. We can use a YouTube video to figure out maybe, how to power wash our driveway or something along those lines. We can use YouTube videos to show us how to do certain things, right? And we can use those as frameworks. So why isn't there a framework for a successful business model? And, there could be, right? And so some of the tools and the items that you will see within the text and that you might view in one of the videos that we'll talk about and that you might learn from from the discussion posts relating to interviewing an entrepreneur, all the different things, hopefully will start to get you thinking about what a successful framework is. And so you do not have to reinvent the wheel in all different areas. How do you get started if you want to start a business? How do you grow a business if you already have a business? So let's just look at chapter 1 first. And when you are looking through and reading the chapter 1 has 3 different components in the text. And so entrepreneurship today, there are some examples: entrepreneurial vision and goals, and then 1.3, the entrepreneurial mindset. So when you review the PowerPoint, there are accounts that are promoted from different entrepreneurs that in today's society we consider successful. And in chapter 1, we're looking at several different things, different ways that you might want to become an entrepreneur. You don't necessarily just have to open your own business. There are lots of individuals that have an entrepreneurial mindset that work within organizations as leaders, as innovators. And if you are, and how do you grow some of the things that are required of you, those skills as an entrepreneur? So chapter 1 is you're reading through and reviewing. We have different types of entrepreneurs, and we think about folks that are innovators, right? Finding completely new approaches. So not everybody is the same. This idea of an inventor. And we have creators making something new, right? Finding problems that other folks have not noticed. Market makers, expanders and scalers. Sometimes there might be something small that somebody has developed, right? And they haven't been able to figure out how to market it to the masses, right? And so different ideas, there are different ways that you can really take this growth mindset, right? This innovative mindset. Now, you don't always have to come up with a new product like an iPhone, right? And so you to be an entrepreneur, there are lots of different items out there that have been changed, modified, scaled up. And so those items are also an entrepreneurial approach. And how do you put your strengths to work? So one of the things chapter 1 calls for is to create a list ideas that build off your strengths. What are some of your strengths? We all have different individual skills, right? Things that we have learned over the years. And then when we start to think about, our skill set and our experiences, how do we take all of those experiences, not labeling them good or bad, but really take them and turn them into something that is useful, right? Useful to others, and turn them into something, kind of like hone them in a direction of innovation. Next, how do you look at problem solving, right? And some of us have different ways of approaching problems and solving them. And so that is another way of figuring out how you fit into this entrepreneurial mindset. Like And there isn't one correct way to solve a problem, as most of us know that, right? And so thinking about how we make decisions, right? And in 1.2, we start to look at some of the visions and goals, right? What is an entrepreneurial vision? And so sometimes we start to think about really this idea of mentorship, right? Are there people that you look up to? And later on in this term, even though it's only an 8-week term, we'll be doing a short interview with an entrepreneur of your choice. So be thinking about someone you know that maybe started a business, or maybe someone that you've worked for that you could reach out to either in person, via phone, via email, and ask a few questions of them. If you are running into trouble, though, when we get there, I will help you along the way. So thinking about in slide 17 and figure 1.7 out of chapter 1, this idea of the benefits of a mentor. And anything, and they don't have to be a perfect individual, right? This mentor. And you might have multiple mentors that you take things from, right? You like the way one individual maybe started their business. You like the way another individual currently runs their business. You like the way another individual treats their employees. It's really important. Maybe so you don't have to just have one individual that you are like, I have to find a mentor, right? A lot of us are like, well, there's several people that I like certain things that they do. Take all of that and make it your own, right? And this idea of, from those mentors, what kind of motivation and support do they offer, right? Are you able to get any advice or direction from any of these folks in your lives? How do they set goals and achieve those goals? These are all important components of, an entrepreneur being successful. And this idea for an entrepreneur, like, what is a vision, right? And so even when you're thinking about yourself as like, would I want to be an entrepreneur? Or do I live an entrepreneurial life, right? Or would I like to? Maybe you would like to be more innovative and be more able to process and connect some of the things in your life. And how would you use those experiences, those things that you are connecting, right? And so thinking about your own personal vision statement, right? Some of the things you might, think about when you are thinking about the creative thinking process. How do you write a paper, right? Some of you are new to school. How do you come up with a topic? How do you research the topic? What do you think about, right? Maybe it's not a paper. Maybe it's something you're doing in your own life, right? Maybe you're remodeling your house. Maybe you are changing things up at your workplace, right? How are you preparing for that? And then what are you doing to get ready, right? And then how are you kind of moving forward? So what's that creative thinking process that you are going through? And so in chapter 1, we also look at something called a creating SMART goals. SMART, right? SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. And this is figure 1.9 from chapter 1, if you are following along, which you are able to do either in the text or in the PowerPoint. And then finally in chapter 1, we look at this idea of an entrepreneurial mindset. And what does it even mean, right? And what is this idea of an entrepreneurial spirit or passion? And really, there are certain types of disruptive technologies, right, in industry. And how do those disruptive technologies, the electric car, disruptive technology, the iPhone, right, with the scrolling, with the idea that we can get our emails, and you can see my children on there, right, the young picture of them, that we get everything, right? 20 years ago, this did not exist. 20 years, right? Some of you, that might seem like a long time. You might not even be 20 years old. For some of you, I remember a time before cell phones. I remember a time before the internet, right? I know I sound very old now. But all of these things were disruptions in the way that the entire globe does everything, right? The idea that you don't even need a computer. The fact that we have a computer, right? Steve Jobs was very helpful with that. The fact that you have computers that you can even do online classes, that we have the internet that you can do online classes, that you have the capacity to learn through connecting through the internet. So a few things to think about. What is your own are you someone that likes to start new things, right? And you take on projects and you think like, okay, this is what I want to do. And you go for it, right? Or are you kind of, maybe you aren't there yet, right? And so you're thinking about, how do I get there? How do I be more self-directed? Whether it's in building a business or it's, within your own current parameters of how are you living. I mean, you're here. So you started school, you're thinking, I may want to learn a little bit more. I may want to do something higher ed related. Maybe you want to get your 2-year degree. Maybe you just want to find out what it's about. All of those things. So just the fact that you're here shows some entrepreneurial gumption, right? And so chapter 1, go ahead and look through all of chapter 1 in the text and review the PowerPoint. And you could start in on the homework. There's chapter 1 and 2 are both, they are tied together for the 8-week course. In the 16-week course, I separate them, but for the 8-week course, they are tied together. And so there are some homework questions for you there to answer and submit.